Hey y'all, it's Colin with the Life of Logos, and I've been up all night with this thought. Someone brought to my attention the question of suffering. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of different people who are going to contribute to this conversation in many different ways. As if we should always try to end suffering, or, suffering is just one of the unfortunate parts of life. And I'm going to be honest with you and share my opinion. And then I'm going to break it down in two different applications. I think suffering is the best thing that a human can go through, which is a loaded statement. And I think avoiding suffering is legitimately looking into the universe or God or whomever you believe in and saying, I am not willing to follow you because I am not willing to suffer. And in trying to avoid suffering, you are thus spitting in the face of the Creator himself. And that is a strong opinion, I know. I think if you are not willing to suffer, you are weak. Your avoidance of suffering has made you weak. And if you continue to cling to the bosom of comfort, you will never be who you are called and made to be. A ship is safest in the harbor. It will never crash, it will never be turned aside, and it shall never be in a storm. But ships weren't made to be in the harbor. And neither are you. And neither am I. And I don't think anyone actually is. However, especially now, we live in a society where being comfortable has become the priority. And as a result, we have created several weak generations. Weak and impotent. And if it sounds like I'm yelling or coming across aggressively, I need this to be something that's very clear. And the next time you will be as comfortable as you are in the womb, you'll be dead in the grave. To live is to suffer. And there is no avoiding suffering. If you're afraid of suffering, then you are resigning yourself to only being a child. That's all you'll ever be. Until you learn to suffer, you are only a child. You can't give life, you can only take it. And in that, you will be subject to the tyranny of a different sorts. A tyranny of a gentle and caressing mother who will never let you become that which you are called to be. There's a movie about this, actually, and it's such an odd movie. It's called Spirit. It was a DreamWorks movie. It's about a horse. And in essence, this horse, he lives on he's really a stallion. He's a wild horse in the Americas a long time ago. And essentially he gets captured by this like general of the US something. And then the general tries to literally break him. And he doesn't, he manages to escape. And then he runs off with this Native American guy. The Native American guy essentially tries to just comfort him into submission. And he ends up rejecting that as well. And at the end of the story, he ends up fighting back, goes back, meets the guy again, finds the girl, falls in love, which is the hero's journey, truthfully. And life is going to meet you in one of those really two ways. It's either going to try to just crush you brutally, harshly, whether that be like the economy, that be your job, whether that be bullies, whether that be sickness or tragedy. That's one thing that can just crush you if you submit to it. And then there's this other side that we don't talk about at all, which is comfort. Comfort is the fall of kings. It was from a comfortable position where King David, who should have been off fighting a war, fell into the temptation that undid his entire kingdom. Comfort. And the thing is, if you let yourself get comfortable enough, you get wrapped up in this stew, if you will. You get wrapped up in a prison of its own self, but one where you never knew that you were a prisoner and you have no intent to escape. And the cost of living in the prison of comfort is your purpose and destiny. Avoiding suffering doesn't make you better. It doesn't call the best out of you. It doesn't give your gift to the world. It doesn't develop you into something that is far greater than you ever thought or imagined you'd be. Living in a world of comfort makes you nothing more than a child of old age. And a 42-year-old baby is a gruesome sight. Because it takes character to be able to face the realities of life, because that's all comfort is. Character is one's ability to face reality. And when a person's character is strong, they can endure the trials of life by facing it head on. And in doing so, they grow. And in doing so, they are challenged. They make connections and become something greater than they ever would have if they had stayed in the Shire. That's what every story you ever heard is. Every story, they always begin in the Shire, in the place of comfort. And either they choose to leave to become something better, or they're forced to leave to become something better. And on that road of challenge and consequence, they become this character that we love and admire, something that is a hero. There is no hero without suffering. There is no challenge in comfort. There is no greatness in this Shire that so many of us are so quick to bind ourselves to. And that shows up in different ways. I think one of the greatest travesties that we've done to dating and to marriage is our commitment to comfort. And I try not to talk about dating because I understand there's a gender war and that makes it really cheap content where people just want to, men are this way, women are this way. Guess what? You're both wrong. Because we live in this culture, particularly in the States, where we see a person and we see that person as the antidote to our suffering. I'm uncomfortable. Let me go find somebody. I'm lonely. I need to go find somebody. I'm not comfortable, or I'm horny. I need to go find somebody. Or I need to be validated, so I need to become somebody. And we have aligned romanticism and truthfully lust and wrapped up all of that as our solution to our own suffering. And that is fundamentally backwards. Because if you're really in a relationship with somebody, that's the beginning of the suffering, not the end. If you love somebody, you understand you are opening your heart to vulnerability, not only from that person who is likely going to hurt you. By that, I do mean 150%. They're going to hurt you. But you're also allowing that person to be the leverage point for every other malicious and insidious force in your life. So, loving someone, you actually greatly, exponentially enhance the potential of your own suffering. But, as I said earlier, many of us are trying to avoid suffering. Do you see how those two things are in contradiction? You can't have both. You can't try to avoid suffering and love somebody. Because to love someone is to suffer for them, and that's why it's called passion. Furthermore, if you get past the fact that that person, the object of your affection, is going to hurt you, and other people are going to manipulate them to hurt you, you also have to watch them suffer. Because there's no amount of loving someone that's going to keep them from getting cancer. There's no amount of loving someone that's going to keep them from losing their job or getting in a car accident or dying, because that's one for one. If you love somebody, you have to accept the fact that the likelihood is one day either you are going to watch them die or they're going to watch you die. That's reality. And if you're not willing to face that, you have no business being in a relationship. You have none. Just keep doing what you're doing, hopping from pillar to post, going here, there, and everywhere, waiting for someone to scratch your itch, instead of actually committing from love to a person. Love overcomes all things because love is greater than suffering. That's why fear and love cannot coexist. That's why the epitome of love, in the historical references of love, it was willing to die a very painful and unjust death because of the person that they loved. Does that make sense? If you don't accept the fact that you are going to have to die, you are going to have to suffer, And you're going to have to watch the other person do the exact same thing. You have no business being in relationships. You know how weak that sounds? You know how abysmally hopeless and tragic that sounds? Because you're not willing to suffer, not willing to face pain. And that's just in relationships. Because that's the thing. You can. You are far more powerful. You are far more resilient than you can possibly imagine. But you'll never know until you face the pain. And that's a scary thought. For most of us, that is unreasonably terrifying. Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. Everybody wants to be a superstar, right? Everybody wants to be a hero, live the life, experience lavish things, have adventure. But not everybody's willing to suffer. There was like a million different variations of this quote, right? Everybody wants to be Mike Tyson, but nobody wants to get punched in the face. Everybody wants to be Ronnie Coleman, but no one wants to lift no heavy ass weights. No, everybody wants to be Fatty Wap, but nobody wants to lose an eye. You know what I'm saying? You have to be able to go through those things. You have to. Everybody wants to be Nelson Mandela, but nobody wants to be in prison for 27 years. Everybody wants to be a doctor. No one wants to go through medical school. The greatest things that you will ever experience in this life are on the other side of the thing that you're most afraid of. That's why when you look at, King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, the way to the treasure is in the part of the forest that they see is the darkest. It's the part that you're most afraid of, which is your path to victory, success, and freedom. And there is no freedom. There is no freedom in fear. There isn't. And as long as you're avoiding pain, you are sacrificing your future, your love, and your purpose on the altar of fear and comfort. So if it sounds like I'm passionate about this, I am. You cannot live until you are first willing to accept your death. But that's where life begins. And it makes even more sense if you look at it because, again, going back to some of the religious archetypes, that's why the greatest hero in the story had to die, isn't it? It has layers, doesn't it? He who was the most important person that ever lived, archetypically speaking, was the one who was willing to face the worst pain for love. And then, because life doesn't begin until after you have confronted death, he had to rise again. It's a perfect story. It's a perfect archetype. Religion aside, there's a message there for all of us. Don't submit to the fear. You must face your discomfort and the pain and the suffering. And when you get the courage of character to face those things, that is where your life will begin. I'm Colin Charles. This is Life of Logos. We'll catch you next week.